right, so we'll go ahead and kick our session off today. So thanks everyone so much for joining me. My name is Marley Long, and today we're going to be talking about gamification in SharePoint. So we're talking about how to drive loyalty and adoption across the digital workplace for SharePoint and Office 365. So just a bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded, so if you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who has signed up. So you will be receiving the recording in the next few days. You can also connect to us on Twitter. We are live tweeting, so if you have any feedback, if you have any questions that maybe I don't get to during this session, you can always tweet us, and our Twitter handle is @Cardiolog. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm going to leave some time towards the end of this session today. So you can send your questions through the questions box, or I'm sorry, through the chat in the GoToWebinar panel. And again, if I don't get to your question for some reason, if we run out of time, we'll be happy to answer any remaining questions via email as well. So in regard to the agenda for today's webinar, we'll start out with a very short introduction. Some of you guys may know us. Some of you guys, this may be your first time attending a webinar for us, so we'll talk a little bit about INTLOCK and who we are. Then I'll jump straight into gamification in SharePoint. So where we are now with engagement in the digital workplace and how we can use gamification methodology to better drive collaboration and productivity across the spectrum. Then I will jump into a presentation of our new product called Gamify, and this is actually our second installment of our gamification series. So we'll be focusing today on Gamify for Yammer. So if any of you guys out there have Yammer deployed across your environment, this will be particularly interesting for you. But of course, I will be reviewing all of our existing Gamify dashboards, plus a few new administrative features that we've introduced. And at the end, as I mentioned, we'll be taking some questions, so feel free to send any comments that you have throughout the presentation at any time, and I'll hopefully get to some of those questions at the end. So just a brief introduction about INTLOCK, who we are and what we do. We've been around now for about 13 years, since 2005, and our headquarters are based out of Boston. And over the past 13 years, we've been focused on analytics designed for SharePoint and Office 365. So our flagship solution is Cardiolog Analytics. It's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 2010 to 2016, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365, of course. We can also track some third-party tools, like we'll be seeing here today, for example, Yammer, some Citrion, as well as a few CRM tools. And our solution is also available both as an on-prem solution hosted on a dedicated server, as well as a SaaS version based on Power BI and hosted in Microsoft Azure. And today we're going to be focusing on what we've been focused on this year particularly. We are introducing two new, exciting new standalone products. One is what we'll be talking about today, which is our gamification product. We also recently released a new engagement product called Cardiolog Engage. So if you're looking to better engage with your users within the portal and launch really innovative campaigns, this is a solution that can also address those challenges as well. So just a little bit about our vision and our goal. So our goal is to help our customers, as well as anyone in the community who we work with, to improve SharePoint based on how it's being used. So there's really three main pillars that we talk to our customers about. So the first pillar is really monitoring SharePoint, so tracking the usage within SharePoint with in-depth SharePoint analytics, insights, and usage reports. The second is engaging our users, asking them what their needs are, what their pain points are, and what's not working for them. And then finally, the most important pillar is to enhance. So we want to make sure that we're constantly improving SharePoint based on these pillars. And the idea is to really have these actionable metrics, which will allow us to constantly make the portal better for the users. So as I mentioned just before, just a brief overview of our various solutions. So as I mentioned, Cardiolog Analytics, we have both Cardiolog Analytics as a SaaS-based solution and an on-prem solution. Cardiolog Engage, a really interactive solution for sending campaigns across the SharePoint portal and engaging with your users, asking them what their needs are, launching surveys, and really digging deep to understand how you can improve various aspects of the portal. And finally, we're going to talk about Gamify today. So we'll focus a lot on how you can use gamification methodology to improve your SharePoint adoption. So I'm going to jump straight into gamification and SharePoint, why we came up with this solution, and where we are now with SharePoint adoption. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenge. So 70% of the workplace is actively disengaged. Enterprise software is still perceived as difficult to use, which really results in low user adoption. Training can often be disconnected from real work. So what does that really mean? Oftentimes there will be a huge push for training. You'll have a few days in the office where everyone will get together, everyone will be really excited, they'll learn a little bit about SharePoint, but the second they go back to their desk, the excitement kind of slags off, and what are we left with? So there's really this need for constant guidance, for something to consistently motivate users within the portal, as opposed to just kind of these, random spurts of training that don't necessarily give you any long-lasting effect. And finally, there is a gap in SharePoint for targeting end users with real-time feedback. So oftentimes, users have no idea how they stand within the portal. They don't really understand why they need to be using the portal, and they have no real motivation to consistently return to the portal. But as we've been working for almost 12 plus years, we've been really working on the admin side. So with really in-depth analytics, targeting administrators and business users who can really use these analytics reports to hopefully make actionable change within the portal and to motivate their users, but that can only go so far. So to actually see real change, we needed to kind of revolutionize what we were doing, and this is why we decided to incorporate gamification methodology, and that's how our answer to this adoption challenge that many organizations face. So we ask, how can we fix this? And our answer is gamification. Some people do like to refer to it as motivational hacking. For our purposes today, we're going to refer to it as gamification. So what is gamification? Gamification focuses the design of tools back to the most important element, which is what we're talking about today, the end user. So through the use of gaming mechanics and logic, gamification enables a shift towards human-focused design and can really make work more fun and meaningful while at the same time fostering collaboration, adoption, and productivity. And that's really the end goal. That's what we're looking for when we analyze our SharePoint portal. So we also saw that employees that receive regular recognition and rewards for doing good work are responsible for a 10 to 20% increase in revenue and productivity, according to a Gallup research study. So this is a really interesting piece of information that really fits into our vision with gamification and why we think gamification is part of the answer towards improving long-lasting adoption and not just random sprints of, increased user adoption here and there after a really exciting training period. And when we talk about this virtual world and we talk about gamification and we talk about games, it's really important for us to step back and ask ourselves, how do we get so consumed in games? What is that specific element that makes us so addicted? Why do we sit for hours on end and, consumed completely in a game, not even getting up to even eat or drink? And it really makes me think, how can this concentration, this focus, this real motivation be mapped and leveraged into a non-gaming context? And so that's essentially what we've done. A little bit about Octalysis. This is a complete gamification framework. Some of you may be familiar with this, I'm not sure, but Octalysis was developed by Yu-Kai Chu, and he refers to gamification as the craft of deriving all the fun and engaging elements found in games and applying them in real-world or productive activities. So he calls this human-focused design as opposed to function-focused design, and he really makes a big point to say that many technologies now, especially technologies even for on SharePoint, are really usually designed from the perspective of function-focused design. So when we develop technologies based on human-focused design, this design process optimizes for human motivation in a system as opposed to pure efficiency. So the end result is a gamification framework that he came up with called Octalysis. I'm not going to get too in-depth into this today. It's really interesting. I encourage, if any of you guys are really interested in this subject, I encourage you to read more about it. It's based on an octagon shape with 8 core drives that represent 8 sides. So, some of the 8 core drives are meaning, empowerment, social influence, unpredictability, avoidance, scarcity, ownership, and accomplishment. And if any of you would like, I can share this presentation with you after if you want to see any more details around this framework as well. So we essentially took some of this framework, some of this idea, and incorporated it into our vision when we developed our product for Gamify. So another quick but fun example that I like to give. So many of you may have seen Disney's animation movie Monsters, Inc. Sullivan and Randall had a competitive rivalry to be on the top of the leaderboard. So it was really apparent that tracking and then this real-time feedback where they were constantly kind of, glued to the leaderboard significantly affected the monsters' behavior in speed and focus on the job. And a leaderboard is a great example of, giving that constant real-time feedback. And it may be relevant for specific teams in your organization and less specific for other teams in your organization. So for example, for a sales team, this could be great. Incorporating leaderboards in that way could really motivate them to be able to see, how they've been doing with their sales. So we're talking today about gamification for SharePoint usage because we want to improve SharePoint adoption. But these elements of gamification can be mirrored across the organization. So using it in SharePoint is great for improving your SharePoint adoption, but as kind of from the bigger picture, it can also be used to really try to motivate people in other interesting and creative ways as well. So how can we relate gamification and SharePoint? So back to this idea of leveraging gaming in a non-gaming context. I can assume that we're all here because in one way or another, we all work with SharePoint on a daily basis. And when you work with a technology like SharePoint, it's really important to remember that we should approach these technologies, again, from this human perspective, because at the end of the day, it's really humans that we're seeking. It's humans that we're seeking to motivate and hopefully enact some change or recognize and push through a flow. So our answer is that enterprise gamification can drive SharePoint adoption so that you can realize the many benefits of SharePoint that go beyond, as I mentioned, a brief adoption project. So it lets companies create lasting change in behavior that drives SharePoint adoption. And gamification drives employees to boost their involvement with SharePoint so they can even make better use of the collaboration, communication, and even management capabilities. And I also want to mention that Microsoft has focused on creating a dynamic digital workplace, and the ability to tap into end-user psyche to understand their needs, challenges, and preferences has really become a reality with analytics innovation. Some of you might know Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. Very interesting character, has a lot of interesting things to say about the topic of empathy and how you can incorporate empathy into technology. So this also really struck with us when we wanted to incorporate empathy and these psychological elements into gamification. So Satya Nadella says that empathy is not just something nice to have, but it's really core to the innovation agenda in a company. So when organizations leverage gamification and engagement strategies in the digital workplace, they are really translating Nadella's vision into reality by putting themselves in the shoes of their users to drive a more productive workplace. So now I'd like to take just a moment to introduce Gamify to you all. So to solve some of these most pressing SharePoint challenges, we've introduced Gamify, a new way to drive productivity and adoption through a gamified user experience. So it helps you make your activities, your content, and your users more visible within the internet with an end goal of boosting SharePoint adoption and productivity. So you can target your end users directly and drive repeat visits. You can display peer-to-peer metrics so that they can understand how they compare against their peers, which really encourages competition, as well as igniting user motivation, recognizing users via leaderboards, and rewarding and energizing them with actionable next steps. So let's talk a little bit about who can benefit from Gamify. So as I mentioned before, when we talk about analytics, most of the time our analytics are used by our administrators, by our business users. But the interesting thing about Gamify is that it's actually for both administrators and end users. So it's for both of you to consume analytics data. So for the end user, it really allows them to understand where they stand in terms of their engagement level, how they're performing over a period of time, what their persona is. So, what's their status in the portal, who are they, what's their identity, and how they compare to their colleagues. For an administrator, it allows you to understand where your end users or your department stand in terms of their engagement, how they perform over a period of time, and again, how one department compares to another as well. And I'll show you a little bit later, we have some new features for our administrators to be able to select which properties they would like to track within the portal. So for example, if your organization is more focused on creating content or that kind of thing, you can specifically track only those items and not reward people for, only viewing or, kind of taking a more observant persona within the portal. But it's all, very tailored so that you can really understand how you can, tailor this according to your organizational needs. So actually, this is what I just mentioned. So here you can see you can actually select which metrics you would like to track. So for example, if you'd like to reward people for updating content, for viewing or downloading documents, contributing content, searching for content, rating content, writing posts, and this is all according to the KPIs that you've set out. So whether there are certain activities that you would like to reward, whether there are certain activities that you wouldn't like to highlight in the portal, it's all very easy for you to control from the administrator dashboard. So I'm going to jump now into our demonstration. And we're going to start out with just a little brief review. This is our, our second installment of our webinar series, but I do want to review some of our, administrator dashboards and user dashboards for any of you that are not familiar with them. So starting out with our administrator dashboard, this report really gives you an overview of how your groups and users are performing with your organization and what their scores are. So across the top, you can see we have our likes over time, our user churn over time, and our ranking over time. So our likes over time are how many likes the users of the group gave over time. Our churn over time is the number of users who became less active in the past days, weeks, or months. And our ranking over time is categorized as ranking over time based on score. And the group score is the average score of the group members combined. So the higher the score, the better. So it works essentially like points. And the user score is calculated by the overall activity of the individual user. So you can see here, you can see your most adopted groups within your organization. So if I click on our sales group, I can see that all this information is dynamic and now will only reflect the data for our sales group. So you can see that they have a group rank of 56. You can also view their engagement over the past few months, as well as user rankings within these groups, as well as your most adopted people within your sales group. So it's just a really nice way to get an overview, an overall glance of what's going on within your groups. Same with, for example, if I select our R&D group, then of course, the information that will be displayed to you will show you only information for your R&D group. And we're going to also show you our user dashboard. So this is the really interesting part that is a really powerful way to share information with your users on their performance and motivate them through their achievements and scores. So I think what's really interesting about this dashboard is that this is the first time that we've ever tried to display metrics to the users in the SharePoint portal about their activity. So here we can see we have different personas, so whether a user is a contributor, an engager, or an observer, and they'll be given a persona within the portal. You can also see some really nice vanity metrics here. So for example, total number of people who read a user's content. Positive ratings are the total number of ratings a user received between 3 and 5. Comments are the number of comments a user received on their content. And engaged, meaning the total number of times that the user's content was engaged with. And here the user can see, their peers, so how they perform against their peers. And they'll actually be able to navigate to this dashboard. You can decide how you would like to share this dashboard. So you can implement it as a web part. You can implement it as a message bar. You can set up, maybe a weekly or monthly email to the users to update them on their score. So that's, an interesting way for them to be able to see how they're doing and constantly be motivated based upon, constant updates. They also have, badges, so recent achievements, whether they're a top 5% contributor, whether they have, 3,000 engaged users a week reading their content. They can also get additional badges, like maybe they are an early adopter, and you can really, recognize them for that. We can recognize, the rock stars within the portal as well. So there's a number of different badges that we can give to the users, and we're working on more. As I mentioned, we are still in, the primary phase of our product rollout. So we are still working on a few new things. We have some interesting new features that are coming out in the next version releases as well. If you have any feedback for us, if there's something that you'd like to see that you think would be, really beneficial to you, we'd like to hear about that as well. And, as far as creating new types of badges, this is something that, we'll be adding more and more as we release more versions of the product as well. And as I mentioned, in the next few version releases, we'll also be releasing an exciting dashboard that will tell users what exactly they need to do to boost their score, how they can improve their points based upon their actual usage activity in the portal. So it will be very tailored according to their own usage activity. And now I want to show you guys just a little bit of our message bar. So again, I told you that we can display this information through a message bar. So as you can see here, a user can view an unobtrusive message bar that will be implemented across the top of the portal. You can select where you'd like it to be in the portal, whether it's on the home page, whether it's on their team sites, or whether it follows them around, whatever you'd like to see. And it'll highlight specific users, so highlighting the top contributor of the week or the top engager of the week, highlighting those rock stars, and giving users specific actions that they can take, or even for them to reach out to these users to get some more guided help within the portal as well. And as I mentioned, we can also implement this as a web part, so that will show up on the side of the home page or whatever page you decide that you'd like it to appear. And of course, all these colors can be customized if you'd like. That's not a problem. I've gotten that question a lot. So for example, a user will get a quick snapshot of what their individual metrics look like, so they can see, oh, okay, today I'm at my score is 76. Yesterday I was 55. I'm doing great. I recently received this badge, and they can also click here to be able to see their full stats, which will take them to that dashboard that I showed to you earlier, so they can see a more in-depth view of their metrics. So now we're going to move on to our Yammer dashboard. So for those of you that are using Yammer, this is a really exciting new dashboard that can really help you use gamification also for Yammer. So it's essentially, the same idea that we talk about in SharePoint, but essentially, tailored for Yammer. So a lot of these metrics are going to reflect metrics that we're able to track in Yammer. So for example, in our administrator dashboard, you can see your number of praised users, your number of threads over the past 30 days, as well as your number of comments over the past 30 days. And these are very specific metrics that you'll see in Yammer. And we've also got a really exciting user dashboard in Yammer. So for example, they'll see their persona. So they'll see that I'm a top 3% engager. I can also see a few other skills that pertain to me. I may be categorized as an engager in the portal. So that means I'm liking content, I'm commenting on content, I'm sharing content. But I may have some other qualities that fit into the other personas that we'd like to highlight. So we'd highlight some of their exploration skills, So that means that they're, viewing content within the portal. Maybe they're completing the video training that they were assigned to do, as well as some publishing skills that we would like to highlight. So perhaps they created something on their team site and a few people shared it and it was successful. These might not be their strong suits, but we still want to highlight that and make them proud of these achievements. So essentially, that's what we'd like. That's kind of our end goal with this user dashboard and with tailoring this specifically for Yammer, is that we really want to hone in on those, social aspects of the Yammer portal and really appreciate people for their efforts and hopefully drive long-lasting change. So I'm going to go back into our PowerPoint presentation for now. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat box at this time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. If you have more questions about gamification in general, if there are certain specific things that you'd like to track, we're definitely open to having, we'd love to have a conversation about that. We'd love to have a more in-depth demonstration where we can really understand your requirements and tailor that demonstration for you and your team. So if you'd like, you can visit our website at www.intlock.com. So you can go straight there. You can book a demonstration. Our team will be in touch with you within 24 hours. And again, you can also tweet us at Cardiolog if you have any questions after the webinar that you thought of, something interesting that you see about gamification, anything you like. You can also join our readers at blog.intlock.com. We will be posting some interesting content on gamification within the next few months, so don't miss out on that. If this is a topic that's really interesting for you, I encourage you to continue to visit our site and our blog and keep an eye out for that. And again, if you have any questions, you can always contact us at info@intlock.com. So we'd be happy to, have a conversation with you via email as well as via phone as well. And I also want to mention, if any of you will be attending the SharePoint North America conference next month in Las Vegas, we will be there and we will be demonstrating our products. So if you'd like to see it live and in action, we'd be happy to meet. So if you'd like to reach out to us, we can book a meeting already, and we'd be happy to meet there as well. Okay, so I've got a question from Mark. So Mark is asking whether Gamify is available as an on-prem solution or a SaaS solution. So the answer to that is that we currently are offering our solution as both an on-prem solution and a SaaS solution. So if you're focused on the cloud, a SaaS solution may be, a great option for you. If you're still really focused on your on-premises environment, we're happy to provide you with an on-prem solution. So that's no problem there. Okay, so I've got another question from Jake asking if we track Yammer within Cardiolog Analytics. So venturing off a little bit from the topic of gamification, but yes, we do have very dedicated reporting in Cardiolog Analytics for Yammer. So for example, we can track anything from collaboration within Yammer, how people are interacting, all of these social features that you have in Yammer. We can provide very, very specific detailed reports on that, and we'd be happy to show you just exactly how you can do that. And again, this is available in both our on-prem and SaaS solution. I've got another question asking if there is a trial for Gamify. So as I mentioned, Gamify is, we're still in the very early stages. We have rolled out some trials for our existing customers, but if you would like to get on a list for our trial, that's no problem. We will have a trial coming very shortly. So if you'd like to send your information to us, we'd be happy to take note of that and reach out to you as soon as we have our trial available for everyone. Okay, and I have another question from John asking if we can track SharePoint Online from a on-prem deployment. So the answer is yes. We can track any sort of hybrid environment. So if you'd like to purchase an on-prem product but track your SaaS solution, or vice versa, if you'd like to purchase Cardiolog Analytics SaaS and track, or even Gamify and track an environment that is on-prem, we can do that. That's no problem at all. So it looks like that's about all the questions that we have for today. So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to email them. As I mentioned before, we will be sending the recording out in the next few days, so look out for that. And feel free to share the recording with any of your colleagues that you think would be interested in this. And I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much.